Hey folks, welcome to Unqualified, the fantasy football podcast that's been doing things differently since 2017. I'm your producer, Rob Diesendorf, and I'd like to take a second to talk about something. We're an independent podcast. It's me, Sean, and Scott, and we love doing this. It's the best part of our week, and one of the most important things for us is just to help the show grow, and it's tough to do that on our own, and one of the best ways for this show to get out there to other people is if you guys, the listeners, share it with them. So if you have a friend who plays fantasy football, if you have a league mate that you think might like the show, if you have a weird uncle who would think my jokes are funny, just tell them about it. Send them a link. Send them an episode. Send them a quote. Anything. Just share the show with as many people as you can. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but if there's one way you want to show appreciation, that would be the way. Grassroots. Tell people about it. So right now, before we get started with this episode, I want you to go find somebody that you think would like this podcast and send them an episode or send them a link to the podcast. Do it now. Are you doing it? Click your home button, go, copy the link, paste it, send it in a message, send it in a Facebook message, tweet it, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram, send it in an email, write it in a letter, and mail it to your friend across the country. Put it on a carrier pigeon and have it sent across the Atlantic Ocean. Put it inside of a box and then put it inside of another box and pay extra shipping on that box and send it to yourself. Have it go to China first and then send it back. Have it go all the way around the world. Did you do it yet? Did you send the episode? Did you? Don't lie to me. Did you do it? Did you share the podcast? Share the podcast right now. Please do it. Share it. Please. Share it. Okay. I'm going to leave you alone now. Let's toss it over to Sean and Scott, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Once again, thanks for listening. We really appreciate everybody. Thanks.
All right, so week 2 in the books. What did we think? It's a little weird again, a little wonky week.
Yeah, it was a weird week, but it's a little closer to like the norm that we're going to see week to week. We didn't see any defenses leading, the whole league in scoring. Nothing of that nature happening this week. Some guys bounce back. Some guys still don't look good. So we'll get into all that coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the defense is wonky as heck week 1 with the Rams and Jaguars scoring like 29 points. But my biggest takeaway from week 2 is a lot of disappointing running back performances, which we'll get into the specifics of. Again, this is a passing league through and through, and it's becoming more and more so. So I think that just goes into the strategy of having solid running backs. But we'll get into some guys that disappointed and did well and everything like that. To go off of those defenses that scored really well in week 1, both of them sucked.
Yep.
The way I just had the Jaguars and the Rams. Terrible week 2. So again, just stream defenses. That's another takeaway.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is we're seeing guys that, are young, inexperienced, or relatively inexperienced, and they're coming in and they're immediately becoming fantasy starters or absolute fantasy stars right out of the gate. Kareem Hunt, Carson Wentz, guys like that who, there's no reason for these guys to be sitting on your bench in the first place, but now it's just, it's kind of a changing in the guard, and I like it. Yeah,
I love it. And we're going to get into those guys in particular again. I think we mentioned both of them last week too, but
yeah,
unbelievable talents and leading that youth movement in quarterbacks and running backs. Let's get into key injuries from week 2, and then we'll get into the specifics of everything. So we're going to go top down, position by position, quarterback first. Right before week 2, he didn't get hurt in week 2, but we had Sam Bradford, the Minnesota quarterback, ruled out with a knee injury, and that's the same knee that he had a couple ACL injuries on. So he might be back week 3, but tough sitting out there.
Yeah, just when we thought the Vikings are going to be, almost a powerhouse offense with Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Dalvin Cook, Bradford goes and gets himself on the injury report. So, definitely time to pump the brakes on the Vikings a little bit.
Yeah, and I we saw Thielen and Diggs have mediocre games week 2. So if Bradford's out for any extended stay, I would bunk down those two wide receivers and even Kyle Rudolph. Dalvin Cook should be fine, but again, that whole team doesn't really do as well. Another quarterback, Deshaun Kaiser, had a migraine. I know all about that, have migraines, but he came back into the game. He was fine. I don't think you're picking him up still, but that's another quarterback injury. Running backs, more interesting. DeMarco Murray, tight hamstring. He had to leave the game, and Derrick Henry took over and crushed it. So what are we expecting from DeMarco Murray? Is he back next week?
Well, first off, you're welcome to all the listeners that we told to take Derrick Henry, because we told you DeMarco Murray has a checkered injury past, and, Derrick Henry is more than capable of running the ball for the Tennessee Titans. We saw both those things happen in week 2. I don't think it'll, be quite a clean situation where we see Henry steal the job here, but, there's no reason to think that Murray's not going to be banged up for a couple of games this year, and Henry is definitely usable. Honestly, even when Murray's healthy, depending on the matchup. So, we're going to talk about him a little bit when we get to the waivers, how he's someone that, easily, if you manage to pick him up this week, could really help you out moving forward. Again, DeMarco Murray, I was already worried about him coming into the year, and now it's just, it's pretty much what I expected from him.
And for those that dropped Derrick Henry, there's like a 25% of leagues that dropped Derrick Henry. If by some reason he is in your league, pick him up like immediately. We're not going to talk about him as free agent pickup because he should be owned in 100% of leagues. And this situation really quickly could be like Atlanta with Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman. Now that Derrick Henry has has a one good game under his belt where he was the guy, they might give him more carries moving forward. So monitor that. Another running back that got hurt, Rob Kelly on Washington, fractured his rib, I believe. We're waiting on X-ray results, but he could be out a couple of weeks.
Yeah, he was having a really, really good game until that happened, so that's kind of a shame. Look for Samaje Perine to take over that backfield, and I'm not really super excited about him, but Rob Kelly was starting to look pretty good, and of course,
Fat Rob.
As soon as that happens, fractures a rib.
Fat Rob got a fractured rib, not from being fat, not from being too fat, just from getting hit. Another running back, Jordan Howard, Chicago running back. This is a really tough one. We're going to talk about when we talk about duds for this week.
Yeah,
Jordan Howard almost leads the list, but he had a shoulder injury. He should be fine, but Tariq Cohen is a real threat there and is getting a ton of targets and catches out of the backfield and even carries too.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it more with the duds, but honestly, if you just look at the screen, Tariq Cohen looks like he's the more talented running back on that team. So, proceed with caution with Howard.
Yeah, and that team's going to be down a lot. So, and Cohen's the guy catching it out of the backfield. So, PPR leagues, points per reception leagues, Tariq Cohen gets a bump there if Howard is still limited. Moving along to wide receiver injuries, Jordy Nelson had a quad injury, which you hate to see. He's 32 now. I'm not sure his prognosis, but moving forward, he's been injury prone before. So when he's out there, he's great, but when he's limited, it's a tough situation.
Yeah, and we saw Devontae Adams step right in and have a great game on Sunday night. Obviously you really hope Jordy's healthy just for the sake of the offense as a whole, but again, he's another guy that we said he's getting up there in age, might slow down. So, you got to really be careful with these older guys. Yep.
Another wide receiver, Corey Coleman on the Browns, broken hand. He's out for multiple weeks. So you could safely drop him. We'll talk about a guy to pick up in his place. Chris Hogan, wide receiver on New England, had a knee injury. It was really downplaying it. Might be more serious than we thought, but one to monitor in the coming weeks and days. Corey Davis, wide receiver on Tennessee, had a hamstring injury, returned to the game, but wasn't really effective at all. So, again, take him out of your lineups in week 3, and just we got to wait and see a good game from him. That's it for wide receiver injuries, notable ones. Tight end injuries were a lot more.
This is the biggest one of the week, in my opinion.
Yeah, Greg Olsen broke his foot. Greg Olsen, the tight end on Carolina Panthers, he's out 6 to 8 weeks. So we're going to get into who to drop, but you could make a case for dropping him if you absolutely need another starting tight end, but that's a tough break for him.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about this more later, but if you're in a deeper league or if you just have the availability to keep Greg Olsen on your bench, 6 to 8 weeks seems like forever now, but come fantasy playoff time when you can get him back potentially, obviously he might not come back at full strength, so it's, a gamble, but it might be worth, rolling the dice, keeping him on your bench just because, it's a 6 to 8 week prognosis. He'll come back before the fantasy playoffs start. So, don't immediately drop him. I would see kind of how he progresses in a week or two, maybe. And then, there's, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he has a terrible foot surgery. I think he had it today.
Yeah, he did.
And then if something like that happens, then drop him. But for now, I would gather more information before you make a big decision.
Yeah, I would wait like a month. I think you'll have a lot more information in 3 to 4 weeks. I would actually keep him too. I agree with you. Rob Gronkowski got a groin injury and left the game. He was effective as, had 100+ yards and a touchdown. But, again, another injury. Be wary. Couple other guys. Jordan Reed, another injury for Jordan Reed on Washington. Yeah, he had an SC joint sprain, but he came back into the game, so he should be fine. He had an AC tear, I think, in his it's in his shoulder or chest last year, and he had to miss multiple games, but he could be limited moving forward, but I still think they need him there. So should be okay. Just monitor his prognosis. And then Tyler Eifert, Cincinnati tight end, I'm more worried about. He had back and knee injuries.
God, it did not look good.
Yeah, and those are off-season injuries that he re-aggravated, and he's made of glass too.
Yeah, those last three guys, obviously Olsen, breaking his foot is kind of heartbreaking. That's, not necessarily him being injury prone, it's just kind of unlucky. But Gronk, Jordan Reed, Tyler Eifert, not shocked at all that they're on the injury report. I am a little bit surprised that it's in week 2. That was very quick for those three guys to show up on the injury report. Definitely wouldn't feel great about any of the three, just because of how injury prone they've been in the past. So again, it's tough. It's tough when you're counting on these guys really to be, one of your probably 4 or 5 best players on your team. And if they're, banged up week to week, you might not get, peak performance.
All right. That's the injuries in week 2. Now we're going to be getting into the blue chip players. So these are guys that won the week. And we're going to be doing not just the top 3 guys in each position, but we're going to be doing basically notable performances. So these are guys that kind of came out of nowhere or really bounced back from week 1 performances. And again, we're going to be talking about each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and then a couple of defenses and kickers. But quarterback, we're going to do player of the week. First of all, guy that really stood out. Sean, you want to talk a little bit about C.J. Anderson, Denver Broncos running back?
C.J. Anderson. First off, let me start by saying I didn't see this coming this year. I owned C.J. Anderson last year, and he had a really red-hot start to the year. He wore down towards the middle of the year and then got hurt. However, the Denver Broncos look like they're for real through 2 weeks so far. Trevor Siemian's been lights out as their quarterback. I was high on Jamal Charles coming into the year, but it looks like he's going to be more of like a Tevin Coleman type complimentary back. C.J. Anderson looks like the real deal. I think he's a top 15 running back for the rest of the year, unless he gets hurt. Someone, if you drafted, in round like 7 or 8, you're very excited about having on your team, and he might have won you your week this week. He had, I believe, 30 points in PPR. It might have been a little bit lower in standard, but, an outstanding performance in week 2 from C.J. Anderson.
Yeah, he had 25 rushes, 118 yards, 1 touchdown, and then in the passing game, 3 targets for 3 receptions, 36 yards, and 1 touchdown. So he killed it. I mean, Jamal Charles had some carries, but didn't look like he was any threat to C.J. Anderson's workload. So that's a really good sign to monitor moving forward. I don't think you even sell him high. I think you hold on to him because you got him at such good value.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's our player of the week for week 2. Blue chip guys for each position. So quarterback, we got Tom Brady, Terrific Tom, who came back from a terrible week 1 performance. This week, he was 30 of 39 for 447 yards and 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Moving forward, again, he's top 3 quarterback, but I think this just solidified it for owners that really struggled after his week 1 terrible performance.
Yeah, it was against New Orleans, so obviously, we were kind of looking forward to this coming into the week.
Right.
Gronk went up on the injury report, but he did look good. He looked better than he looked the week before. Brady's still not really meshing with Cooks, so when that happens, he'll be even better. Brady just looks great heading into the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think those weapons on the running back weapons, the new ones that he has that could catch out of the backfield, are just unbelievable. James White, Rex Burkhead, who's hurt, so watch out for Burkhead. But this guy's unbelievable. Top 3 quarterback, which there was no doubt, but after a bad week 1, it was tough to see. Another quarterback performance that was a blue chip performance. Carson Wentz, Philadelphia. He was 25 of 46, 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Right now, he just vaulted himself into the QB1 discussion. So if you have like a low-end QB1, maybe a Kirk Cousins or Cam Newton that's been struggling mightily, and you have Wentz on your bench, I would put Wentz in your starting lineup week 3 and moving on.
Yeah, he looks great so far. It was a tough game against Kansas City, so that accounts for kind of the low completion percentage. But, you know, he almost brought them back against a team that looks the part. You know, Kansas City looks like they're going to be a absolute Super Bowl contender so far through 2 weeks. And Carson Wentz almost brought the Eagles back against them. So he's looking good the rest of the year.
Yeah. Third blue chip performance, Trevor Siemian, Denver Broncos quarterback.
Did not see that coming.
About him. Out of nowhere. He's a 7th round pick a couple years ago, I think.
Yep.
This week he was 22 of 32 for 231 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Again, vaulted himself into QB2 discussion. So he's going to be one of our pickups of the week. I think you could pick him up if you have a pretty poor starter like a Cam Newton or a Kirk Cousins, and you don't have like a Carson Wentz as your backup. Pick up Siemian, which I'm probably going to do in one of our leagues. Once they establish that run game with C.J. Anderson and Jamal Charles, which they have been, they take it out of Simeon's hands, and he only had 32 passes. That's a perfect situation for him. Running back position for blue chip players. Second week in a row, Kareem Hunt, Kansas City running back, guy's unreal. 13 carries, 81 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 targets in the passing game for 3 receptions, 28 yards. Guy's a top 5 running back as of now for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you got to love everything about this. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. He's in exceptional yards per carry the first 2 games of the year. He's getting himself into the end zone, and he even had time to take a nap after a touchdown. So big
Great
game,
celebration. Yep.
Big game for him. I love him the rest of the year. I agree, top 5 for sure.
Yeah. Another guy, C.J. Anderson. We just talked about him. He's going to be a top 15 running back. So running back 1 or 2 right there, which is awesome value where you got him.
Yeah.
Kudos to you if you drafted for him. I would think about trading for him if you could, even though he's going to be kind of a high price. And then third blue chip performance for running backs, Ty Montgomery, Green Bay. He had 10 carries for 35 yards, 1 touchdown. Not a great per yards carry. But in the passing game, he had 7 targets for 6 receptions, 75 yards, 1 touchdown. Again, I think he's in the running back 2 discussion right now with the amount that he can catch out of that backfield, especially in PPR formats.
Yeah, first off, they like giving the ball as a running back, but he's really a wide receiver that plays running back, and it shows in the stat line. You know, especially in a PPR league, this guy is a real weapon, and, you know, I was kind of sleeping on him coming into the year, so not afraid to, go back on that and say I think this guy is absolutely a running back 2 in standard or PPR right now with some running back 1 upside in that offense.
Yeah, probably top 15, I would say, for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Wide receiver blue chip performances. So obviously we know there's a ton more wide receivers, but these are 3 outstanding performances. Michael Crabtree had 6 targets for 6 catches, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns against the woeful New York Jets. The targets kind of scare me a little bit because they have Amari Cooper there who got more. But he caught all of them, and he's a consistent red zone threat, and 3 touchdowns is unreal. I think he's a top 15 wide receiver. And if you drafted him in like the 4th, 5th round, which is where he was going, you're getting wide receiver 1, like fringe wide receiver 1 and easily wide receiver 2 production.
Yeah, all you got to do is just watch the highlight of Derek Carr throwing that fade up to him in the left side of the end zone. It doesn't work for any other team in the league except for, Derek Carr to Michael Crabtree. He's an elite red zone threat. Obviously, the 3 touchdowns are great. Feel really good about this guy because most people drafted him as a wide receiver 2. He's rock solid as a wide receiver 2. He's got wide receiver 1 upside, as you mentioned. I'm not surprised that it came against the Jets, but definitely, something that you're happy to see.
Yeah, another one, our favorite stupid wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders on the Denver Broncos. 8 targets, 6 catches, 62 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is exactly what he does. He had 25 yards receiving last week in week 1. This week, week 2, 62 yards, 2 touchdowns. And this is like what to expect with him. Every single time he has a valley, he has a peak the next week. So he's probably a top 20 wide receiver overall, but know the limitations and the inconsistencies with him week over week. If I were you, I would sell him high right now because realistically, he probably will be a top 20 wide receiver, but he's going to lose you some weeks if you have him in your starting lineup, which he always does.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Siemian looks great through 2 weeks. I think Trevor Siemian actually looked okay through 2 weeks last year too. You don't know if it's going to be a sustainable season-long thing. And I still think Demaryius Thomas is, the overall number one target in that offense. So, it's kind of on brand for us to hate on Sanders a little bit. He had a great game. He's probably sitting on a lot of people's benches out there, which is so on brand for him. But, got to give him props where it's due.
Yep, and then one last wide receiver blue chip performance, Davante Adams. 10 targets, 8 receptions, 99 yards, 1 touchdown. He's top 15 wide receiver with Jordy Nelson out, which he might be out a couple of weeks. Again, another great performance.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly got Aaron Rodgers' trust. He was kind of the guy that, Rodgers looked to when Jordy's out. He's immensely talented on the outside. He really kept them in that game as long as he could. Atlanta really just was excellent, throughout that whole Sunday night game. But it's great to see Davante Adams have success even with Jordy out, because the last time Jordy was out of the lineup, Adams, had a pretty slow year. Seeing him succeed with Jordy out of the lineup is, definitely a good sign.
Yep, tight ends. Move on to tight end position for blue chip performances week 2. Jason Witten, Dallas Cowboy tight end, longtime Cowboy. 13 targets, 10 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown. Second week in a row he's gotten a touchdown. I think he just vaulted himself into the top 10 of tight ends for the year as a tight end 1. With the amount of that position is so thin this year, and Witten is the safety valve for Dak Prescott right now.
Yeah, I think a big part of this too is Des Bryant really slowing down this year. I think Witten easily a top 10 tight end or at least the next couple of weeks. We'll see how it pans out, but he's a pretty safe option there. I kind of like it.
Yeah. And then 2 other ones that we don't really need to talk too much about. They're pretty obvious, but these guys both bounced back this week in week 2. Travis Kelce had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 103 yards, 1 touchdown. Top 3 tight end, and this just cemented it. So it was a good bounce back game for him. And then Rob Gronkowski, 9 targets, 6 receptions, 116 yards, 1 touchdown. Very, very injury prone, but when he's out there, he's top 3 tight end as well. So just monitor his health all week. If he has any sort of limitation or questionable, you got to think about bumping him down in rankings. But when he's out there and healthy, completely healthy, again, he's a top 3 tight end. Those are tight end blue chip performances, defenses, and defense/special teams and kicker performances that were notable. So again, we like to play the streaming game with defenses, basically play the matchup game. But these ones in week 2 instilled confidence because of the offenses they were facing. So Broncos defense/special teams versus Dallas had 15 points, which is pretty impressive considering Dallas's offense. 17 points against, 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, 2 sacks. They're looking good again. The other one, Buccaneers defense versus Chicago. They had 7 points against, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, 1 touchdown, 1 sack, accounted for 18 points. And this defense looked good. I know it's Chicago, but I would be really happy with picking up the Bucs defense moving forward. And then another one, Bills defense, which used to be, like last year, was heavily owned, and not this year at all. They played at Carolina. They had 11 points. So that was like a defensive game there. It was 9-3, but 6 sacks on Cam Newton. That was pretty impressive, and they have some good matchups coming up. The Jets, they played twice, everything like that. So another good defensive performance. So that's for defenses. Kickers had some interesting performances. So Chris Boswell, who got 3 or 4 points week 1, bounced back with 16 points. And he's only 45.3% owned in leagues. So I would pick him up, feel good about him as a good kicker. It doesn't really matter what kicker you have, but it depends on the offense that you have, and Pittsburgh is always going to be elite. Another one, Ryan Suckup. Is that how you say his last name?
I think so.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Or Suckup.
Suckup. Ryan Suckup. Yeah, I guess Suckup. Tennessee kicker had 15 points, and this is the second week in a row that he's been an elite kicker, and he's only 2.4% owned. So if you have like Adam Vinatieri, I would drop him for Ryan Suckup. And then Nick Folk on Tampa Bay, new Tampa Bay Buck, had 14 points, and he had a ton of value as a kicker on the Jets. He's can't miss, 3.5% owned. So
and Tampa Bay is a good offense, so definitely worth a look.
Exactly. Those are 3 good offenses and 3 kickers that aren't really owned that much to pick up. All right, that does it for our blue chip players of week 2. Now we're getting into the duds, so guys that lost the week. Could have lost you the week, too. Position by position, quarterback, we got Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, and Cam Newton. Ugh. All drafted as quarterback 1s, all had terrible week 2s.
I own each of these guys in one of the leagues that I'm in. Not really pleased with their performance in either week 1 or week 2. As far as Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson go, they're notoriously slow starters. They're usually much better in October, November, and December than they are in September, first month of the year. So I think with those 2 guys, I would kind of just hang tight and just suck it up for a week or 2, until their team gets into rhythm. But Cam Newton, oh boy, I'm concerned. What about you?
Yeah, he got. He's always been injury prone. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He doesn't really do a lot with his arm, but he usually rushes a lot, right? He had 5 rushes for 27 yards. That's it. So these guys are all low-end quarterback 1s right now. I don't think we should be benching them, but if you have another option that's up and coming like a Carson Wentz, I would think about starting Wentz over any of these 3 guys, Kirk Cousins, Wilson, or Cam Newton. But again, stay the course. It's only been 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think the only reason that you would consider, keeping Cam in the lineup next week, if you had a guy like Carson Wentz, is because he's playing New Orleans, which we'll get to. But, if he doesn't bounce back next week, it might not happen, period.
Yeah. Running back situation is a little different here. So running back duds for week 2. First and foremost, Ezekiel Elliott had 9 carries, 8 yards, 5 targets in the passing game, 4 catches, 14 yards. So he's still running back 1, but this was more game flow. That game got delayed by like an hour. Because of weather. He's still a running back 1, but bad game.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm a little bit concerned that Dez doesn't look great, and I think part of that is it's tough to say what came first. Zeke not playing well or Dez not playing well, but Zeke really needs some room to run here because he didn't have anything going against Denver this week.
Yeah, and then Jordan Howard, another pretty much top 10 drafted running back on Chicago, 9 rushes, 7 yards, 1 target in the passing game, 0 catches. Not what you're drafting him as a running back 2 for, and Tariq Cohen is going to steal a lot of value, so I think you need to bump him down in rankings. He might be a top 20 running back at this stage for this year.
Yeah, coming into the year, I mentioned how I was worried, that it was a little bit of one-year wonder thing going on, but even more so, I was worried that the Bears just weren't going to be good, and I think that's what we're seeing so far. They gave a valiant effort in week 1 against Atlanta, but they had nothing going last week or this week, and again, Tariq Cohen looks like, when they're down, he's the guy you want on the field catching the ball. So I'm pretty worried about Howard as well.
Yeah, another guy on a bad team, Isaiah Crowell, Cleveland. He's now a low-end running back 2. He had, again, 10 carries this week, 37 yards, nothing in the passing game. Duke Johnson got some catches. So this is of concern. He's a low-end running back 2, high-end flex at this point now.
This is what you get when you try to get cute during fantasy drafts.
Like I did?
Exactly. You say, they got this great line in Cleveland.
They do.
Crowell
they do have a good line.
Great yards per carry last year. He's still on the Browns.
He did, too.
They're not going to run the ball a ton because they're going to be down. And, that's what you get when you have a running back on a bad team.
This is why fantasy sometimes is infuriating because it doesn't make any sense. They got 2 new cogs on their offensive line that are studs. They literally said they're going to get the ball more to Crowell and run it more. And he puts up a freaking game with 10 rushes and 37 yards. And yes, I'm pissed off that he's on my team. And yes, I'm pissed off that I got cute as well, but he looked like crap. That whole team sucks again. I thought they would be slightly better than they are. Low-end running back 2, maybe think about benching him if you have a higher-end flex guy. Another guy, Christian McCaffrey, that really disappointed. 8 carries, 10 yards. He still caught a lot, 4 for 34 with 5 targets. So standard leagues, he's a flex. PPR leagues where you're getting points per reception, he's a low-end running back 2. But again, Jonathan Stewart's still there, and that team doesn't look that good. Yeah,
I think if the Panthers bounce back and they, kick into high gear, McCaffrey is going to be a big part of that, especially with Olsen going down. So I wouldn't sell on him. Maybe if you have a better option, I would bench him. But, just be patient with him. I think he'll have a better second half of the year because, it doesn't get much worse for the Panthers offense so far.
Yeah. Want to talk quickly about the New Orleans running backs. Adrian Peterson, 8 for 26, 0 touchdowns. Mark Ingram, 8 for 52. They're getting like the same amount of work. I think Peterson's droppable, honestly, at this point. I would hold on to him for another 2 weeks to really see if they're not going to give him the ball more. Mark Ingram is probably the guy there eventually. He's a buy low candidate because, again, he catches it. That offense, like we were saying, flows through him. So with Peterson, you could touch upon this. Peterson, they're going to run it. With Kamara, their other running back, they're going to pass it. Mark Ingram can do both, so he's the most versatile at this point in his career. Peterson, though, he just looks cooked.
Yeah, I was wrong on Peterson coming into the year. I figured he had something left in the tank. I guess there's a reason every team in the league, except for the Saints, decided to pass on him this offseason. He's clearly lost a step, and he's pissed off about it too. He's, already jawing at his coaches for more touches. I think Ingram is just a more complete player than Peterson and Kamara. I really do like Kamara, as far as dynasty purposes go, but Mark Ingram is definitely the New Orleans running back to own, in my opinion. But, I don't feel great about playing either of them right now anyway. So,
yeah, one other guy that's kind of getting phased out now, LeGarrette Blount, had 0 carries, which is perplexing. 1 catch for 0 yards, so he's not droppable yet. See what they're doing with that offense. It was probably game plan because of the Chiefs they were playing, but bumped him down in your rankings. He's a low-end flex at this point and maybe benchable. Wide receiver duds for week 2. These are basically guys that didn't have good weeks, but we're expecting them all to bounce back. So let's go through them quickly. We got Doug Baldwin, 9 targets, which is good to see. Only 6 catches for 44 yards. He's still a low-end wide receiver 1. Terrell Pryor, a little scarier. 4 targets, 2 for 31, 2 catches for 31 yards. He's a low-end wide receiver 2 right now. That offense is just like not clicking. They should eventually. And then 2 other guys that you shouldn't really worry about right now. Amari Cooper only had 4 catches for 33 yards. He's still a wide receiver 1. Brandon Cooks, 2 receptions, 37 yards, still a wide receiver 2.
Yeah, all 4 of those guys are in offenses that I think will, kick into the high gear in the next couple of weeks. As well, you already saw Oakland and New England kicking into high gear, but I don't think Cooks and Cooper will be left out like they were this week. Washington, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I think I love Pryor next week. I think Washington's going to start to come on, and Baldwin, he's just a model of consistency. They'll be just fine there.
Yep. Tight end position. So we had a couple of duds that should have done much better, but Austin Hooper, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 7 yards. He is maybe a top 20 tight end, but again, 2 targets each week from Matt Ryan. Not something that's instilling confidence. He was one of our waiver wire claims last week. I would still hold on to him, see if they could figure that out, because he does have big play potential. But he's probably a tight end 2 right now. And then another guy we told you to pick up, Charles Clay, 3 targets. He should bounce back. That was just a weird defensive game. He's still top 15 tight end at this point for Buffalo. And then Cameron Brate, another dud performance, 3 targets, 2 catches, 24 yards. They drafted O.J. Howard this offseason. He's outside the top 20. Don't even need to pick him up. You don't need to draft him or have him on your team. Just drop him. All right, so that was the notable recap, or the notable performances of week 2. Some studs and some duds. Now we're going to get into the waiver wire. Hopefully you guys reference our released waiver wire pickups yesterday, or earlier this week, rather. We're just going to highlight a couple of guys that we want to talk about for week 3 matchups. So notable guys, Javorius Allen, Baltimore running back, had a really good week, and now that Woodhead's out, he's going to be the guy catching it out of the backfield. Terrence West looked like he was phased out of that game, so he's my number 1 ad this week and could be a flex play week 3.
Yeah, you love to see a running back catch the ball out of the backfield, especially one on the waiver wire. Getting 14 carries, not a terrible yard per carry average in an offense that is a little unsexy, but definitely still functional. I think Javorius Buck Allen is a nice pickup this week.
And also, they're playing at Jacksonville, and Jacksonville has stud cornerbacks, so the passing game is going to be bottled up. They might run it a lot.
Yeah, my number 1 pickup is Chris Carson, Seattle running back. This guy, you'll remember we mentioned him last week. He had 20 carries, 93 yards, didn't get in the end zone, but he had 2 targets, 1 catch for 7 yards. clearly, was their lead back this week. That might not be the case every single week, but, with them not even dressing Eddie Lacy, I think it's safe to say Chris Carson's going to be on the field more often than not. So for that reason alone, he's my number one ad this week.
Yeah, he might have less carries next week at Tennessee, just because Thomas Rawls only had 5 carries and he just came back from injury, so they might phase him in a little bit. But again, Pete Carroll has shown he's not afraid to give the guy the rock that is an unknown. So Carson's a definite pickup this week, and he's only owned in like 7% of leagues. My number 2 ad, so my number 1 ad was Javorius Allen, Baltimore. Number 2 is Rashard Higgins, Cleveland wide receiver. So this guy, Corey Coleman, went down with a broken hand again, droppable in redraft leagues. Higgins stepped in, a rookie, 11 targets, 7 catches, 95 yards. He also had 1 rush for 4 yards. Week 3, he's at Indianapolis, and he's my number 2 ad. I think he's not necessarily a must-own, but if you need some wide receiver help, or if you had Coleman or you drafted Kenny Britt, I would replace them with Rashard Higgins.
Yeah, I definitely like Higgins. He looked really good this week. He's one of those 4 wide receivers that they drafted a couple years ago. So, he's got a little bit of pedigree there. They're pretty high on him. And 11 targets, can't argue with that. My number 2 ad this week is J.J. Nelson, Arizona wide receiver. I'm a tortured John Brown apologist.
Yeah, you really are.
But J.J. Nelson is putting up the stat lines that I expected John Brown to at some point in his career. This week, 7 targets, 5 catches, 120 yards, and 1 touchdown. Had a pretty good week 1 as well. That Arizona offense doesn't look good at all, except for J.J. Nelson. So I think, it's definitely something you want to at least take a flyer on this week. This week, overall, the waiver wire is a little bit thinner than it was last week. But, J.J. Nelson could wind up, being a nice high-end flex play week to week if things, keep trending this direction.
Yeah, for sure. Also, you're right. I think I said Higgins is a rookie. He's not a rookie. He was drafted last year. Sorry. I take it back.
We didn't really see him last year, so he's kind of a rookie.
Yeah, thank you. We'll go with that. All right, so those are waiver wire guys. Again, look on our Instagram or look on our social media accounts for those guys in an order. So we just wanted to highlight 1 or 2 guys there. To get those guys, you got to drop some guys. So we're going to talk about some guys that are cuttable, and then also get into buy low targets that you should be buying, and then sell high targets that you should be selling. So guys that are cuttable, this feels good because I hyped him up all offseason, and this guy's he just sucks. Eddie Lacy, running back, Seattle. I thought he was going to be the next Marshawn Lynch, and he was inactive week 2 because of a coach's decision.
I'm proud of you.
So, are you?
I'm proud of you. You made a mistake.
Oh, I thought you said I'm grabbing him. I was like,
and you're moving on.
Gonna pick him up?
I'm so happy about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been tough, but I'm a tortured Eddie Lacy apologist. Just like you are with John Brown. I think you could drop him. He's probably going to get, honestly, realistically, he's probably going to get cut from that team. They just gave it to Chris Carson 20 times. So, give me a break, Eddie Lacy. Come on.
Oof. Another Scott player, Josh Doxson, invisible in that offense. Didn't even get targeted. They don't look good overall. So maybe if they do start to turn it around, Doxson will get more involved. But, for now, you don't want to keep him on your bench when there's better options available. Yep.
Jeremy Hill, Cincinnati running back. I guess he started the game and he only had 6 carries. And that backfield should belong to Joe Mixon talent-wise. It looks like it's going to slowly trend there, but that team just needs a lot to figure out. So you could make a case to drop him just because there's three guys there, and he's probably the lowest out of there. Giovanni Bernard is the guy catching it out of the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, another guy, Darren McFadden, is not even the handcuff to Zeke anymore. I think that's Alfred Morris. So, for all you guys that drafted McFadden in like the 7th round, hoping you'd get running back 1 production for the first 6 weeks of the year, it's time to cut bait. You messed up.
Yep. Another guy, Latavius Murray, that you didn't get in the 7th round. You probably got him in the 14th. Minnesota running back. It is not. What are you doing? 3 carries, 6 yards. Drop him. Cut him. Dalvin Cook's the guy.
Who else? We mentioned Eric Decker last week. Again, he only had, I think, 3 catches this week. He's not really doing much. I think Corey Davis didn't look good. He got hurt this week, so there's room for Decker to improve, but that team wants to run the ball first and foremost. So I think Eric Decker's ceiling is capped anyway.
Yep. I don't know if you necessarily want to drop CJ Procise, but we know what his role is on Seattle. So he's a Seattle running back. He's the pass-catching back there. If you're not in a PPR league, if you're in a standard league, and you pick up Carson or Rawls, or if you have both of those like I do, I drop Procise because we already know what his value is. He had 3 catches this week, but that's it. No carries. He's not going to be the guy in between the tackles. So that's safely droppable in non-PPR leagues.
Yeah, we mentioned Danny Woodhead last year, and now it's official. It's the end of his season, so let him go. We also talked about David Johnson and Greg Olsen. These are 2 guys that I would personally hold on to just on the off chance they come back sooner on the early end of their injury timetables. It might be worth a stash because they could win you your fantasy playoffs if they come back anywhere near their full strength. Even if they come back at about half speed, I think they're still usable. Peterson, we talked about, just let him go. The Saints honestly might let him go eventually if he keeps mouthing off. And then this one is a little bit of a surprise one from you. You suggested this one. Bilal Powell.
Because they're so stupid. Bilal Powell, oh, God. I hate them so much. I hope they go 0-16 so we get a solid quarterback, Sam Darnold, which that's a whole other debate that we just had. But Bilal Powell, there's a 3-headed backfield now. Some no-name rookie came out of there and had more yards than Bilal Powell, and Matt Forte still looked like the lead back somehow, but it's just an ugly situation. You can make the case to drop Powell. I know you drafted him in the 6th round, but same thing with Lacey. You pretty much drafted him in the top 8 rounds too, and they're just not producing. So if you need one of those guys like a Chris Carson or a Javorius Allen, I would take both those guys over Bilal Powell and Eddie Lacy. All right, those are guys that you can drop, safely cuttable. Now we're going to talk about buy low and sell high. So this is obviously waivers is where you could win your week, win your league, but this might be the most important thing for trades. So buy low. These are basically guys that are underproducing that we think will have better value as the year goes on. So basically, you're buying them at a low price, right? Just list them off. Joe Mixon, Cincinnati running back. He's going to get more and more work as the weeks come on. They know what they got with Jeremy Hill. Giovanni Bernard is only the pass catching guy. Joe Mixon should get more and more carries as we go along. That's a guy to buy low on.
Yeah, I think I like that one. I think 2 guys that I would throw out there are both backup running backs, so you can get them at a really low price. Maybe not Henry this week, but Derrick Henry. I think. Maybe he won't end the year with more fantasy points than DeMarco Murray, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. He's definitely someone I would target. And Duke Johnson had an incredible catch this week. Crowell looks terrible. I wouldn't go crazy because, this is still the Browns offense we're talking about, but, you can get him super cheap and, he could be a pretty good producer, especially PPR.
PPR, yeah. And that was a kind of a bad call on our part. I think we said you could drop him last week, but if you didn't drop him,
still, he might be out there on your waiver wire, to be honest with you, because, he's not very highly regarded.
Yeah, and we're not talking we're talking buy him very low. Like you get him at an extremely low price. But if you have like a backup running, like I don't even know a CJ Procise or something like that, try to trade him away for Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson has a higher upside there. A couple other guys that are buy low targets. These are guys that are high up guys. Ezekiel Elliott had a bad game, but should be a running back 1. Michael Thomas should be a wide receiver 1 as well. These are guys that are drafted in the top couple of rounds. He's getting targeted, but his team looks terrible, so he should be fine when Willie Steed comes back from his suspension and takes some targets off of him or some pressure off. A couple other guys. Mark Ingram, we just talked about him. Should be the lead guy there eventually. And also Devontae Parker, who's a faster version of Alshon Jeffrey, according to Jay Cutler, had some big catches. Another buy low target.
Yeah, I think he's someone that I would specifically target this week because, Jarvis Landry just had a pretty good game. I think he had 13 catches this week. So people are going to be sleeping on Parker, I bet. Definitely a good time to pounce if you want some of that action in Miami.
All right, it's good for buy low, right?
Yeah.
Any other guys that you want to suggest to let us know? But sell high guys. So these are guys that probably outproduced what we thought they were going to do. Might not have the same value as they did in week 2 and the beginning of the season. Emmanuel Sanders, again, week to week inconsistency. You just can't really rely on it. Only 8 targets. They still got Demaryius Thomas. Sell him high. Get whatever you can out of him, like a stud running back 1 or 2.
We just hate Emmanuel Sanders.
I just hate him so much. He's going to be on this list every week. Sell him. Martavis Bryant, only 4 targets.
Keep him.
Yeah. All right, well, we disagree on this, but this is good to give 2 conflicting views. 4 targets. He had 3 of those catches. Long touchdown, but he's not getting targeted. It's all Antonio Brown, and when they're at home, Big Ben is unbelievable. He's statistically a QB1 when on the road he's a QB2. You can make the case to sell Martavis Bryant high.
He's just scratching the surface of what you can do. This guy is going to be a monster the rest of the year. I'm telling you. You may not do it every week, but when he gets a good matchup at home, especially at home, you're going to wish you had this guy on your team. So I personally would, if someone's trying to sell him high, I'd buy him high right now. I think he's a special talent.
Yeah, you love him. Another guy you love, but I disagree with you, and you can make the case to sell him high, is Mike Gillislee, New England running back. 4 touchdowns in 2 games is unsustainable. Yes, LeGarrette Blount got 18 touchdowns, but that's unsustainable. I think, yes, he's the goal line back. He's not going to get 2 touchdowns in every game. He's not going to get 32 touchdowns. It's gonna statistically slow down.
Yeah, this one I will agree with you a lot more than I do on Martavis. I still am not selling him high. Don't get me wrong, but I could see how you can make the case for this. There's so many mouths to feed in that offense that if all we really need is Gillislee to get nicked up, and then his season's done because someone takes his job. I would hang on to him as long as you could, but if you are, deficient in other areas, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to see what you can get for him.
Yeah, I just want to mention one other guy to sell high that he's not going to keep this level of production up. Jeremy Maclin, wide receiver on Baltimore. He's not seeing enough targets to give you the warm and fuzzies, as we say, but 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games. I think you sell him high. He's not really a wide receiver 3 or 4.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so that does it for our buy low, sell high targets. Any other questions? Message us on Twitter, Unqualified FF. Message us on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram. All that good stuff. Any questions like right before game day? Chat us. We're there. We're 24/7 on the clock. If you have any questions on flex position or whatever it is for week 3 and moving forward. Now for our preview for week 3, we're going to try something a little different. We got some feedback. Again, love the feedback, but preview of week 3 is going to be in the form of Would You Rather.
So
we're going to name, I know, this is great. We're going to name a couple of matchups or a couple of guys, and Sean and I are going to duke out who we would rather have. We're probably going to agree on a lot, but basically we're picking between 2 guys that you're probably going to pick between or have questions on at least. And then we're going to throw in some gems, some comedic gems in there of Would You Rathers as well. You ready? You ready, Sean?
I was born ready.
All right, we're going to do position by position again. Same process. Would you rather? Ready? Quarterback. Would you rather? This is only week 3. Keep this in mind. So we're deciding for week 3 with their matchups in mind with how they've done. Cam Newton versus New Orleans Saints, or Ben Roethlisberger at Chicago Bears. Who would you rather have in week 3?
Well, I do have Cam on one of my teams, but I think I'd rather have Big Ben this week. Even though they're away from home, I think Cam is scaring me a little bit too much. I know New Orleans has been a doormat for the first 2 games this year, but Pittsburgh's starting to wake up. So I think for me this week, I'm trusting Big Ben a little bit more than I trust Cam.
Yeah, give me Cam all day versus New Orleans. At home versus New Orleans. This is going to be a shootout like it has been the past 2 weeks in New Orleans. So. Yeah. Roethlisberger isn't as good on the road as he is at home. Still going to do well, but I'd rather have Cam week 3 over Big Ben. Another one, Marcus Mariota versus Seattle Seahawks, or Jameis Winston at Minnesota Vikings. Who would you rather have week 3?
Ooh, 2 brutal matchups.
I know.
For me, I think I'm going to go with Jameis this week. He looked great last week. Obviously it wasn't that as tough of a matchup as Minnesota, but I'm really intrigued. I think this is a good, measuring tape week for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. See what they got against one of the best defenses in the league. Mariota against Seattle scares me a lot more than Winston at Minnesota.
give me Mariota. I'd rather have Mariota for week 3. We're not even doing. we just made this segment. We're not even doing this like to fight each other. I actually think Mariota's going to do better. Listen, Mariota has struggled passing wise. 1 touchdown through 2 games. He has shown a lot of speed and a lot of he's bounced back from a bad leg injury last year. So Winston again had a good game, but he's at Minnesota. That defense is unbelievable. They've held quarterbacks in check for the most part. Even Drew Brees they held in check week 1. Seattle, they're not looking good at all. And Tennessee just stomped around week 2 with 37 points they had. This should be, I think they're going to beat Seattle pretty handily, and Mariota is going to be a big part of that. Week 3.
Yeah, I think, my argument would be that, Jameis Winston gets to throw to Mike Evans, and I don't think there's anyone nearly as talented on Tennessee. But,
True.
Obviously Xavier Rhodes is it gives you a little bit of pause as the top cornerback on Minnesota, but I think Mike Evans is just straight up uncoverable. I think, they'll be just fine this week. I think it's definitely a tough matchup. They're not going to be anywhere near their ceiling, but I think they'll still be functional this week.
Yep. All right, so you heard 2 good arguments for both of those types of guys. And basically the first one, like the first would you rather, was guys we both like this week, and then the second one was tough matchups, so keep that in mind too. All right, we're going to throw in a little gem here. This kind of has to do with quarterbacks a little bit. The other ones don't really. But after every position, we're going to do a little different would you rather. Would you rather have Chris Collinsworth or Tony Romo color commentate your life?
Oh man, there's some great stuff on both sides. I'm going to let you go first because I'm interested to see what you think.
I'm going to go Collinsworth because Tony Romo, he predicts, if you haven't heard him, first of all, with Jim Nantz commentating football games, I guess it's CBS, right? Listen to him. He literally predicts.
He's phenomenal.
All right, this is going to be a run to the left, and it's a run to the left. This is going to be a pass to the tight end, and it's a pass to the tight end. It would creep me out to have him color commentate my life. I'm going with Chris Collinsworth because it's going to sound weird. Everyone hates on him. I like him. His voice is soothing and raspy.
Oh,
weird
man. Well,
sounds.
You could pick Chris Collinsworth if you want to hear him say, well, here's a guy, and here's a guy.
Well, it's just about me. He's not
going
to say that.
You know what? I feel like if I had Tony Romo, I'd be, I'd know what's coming next. So I could be one step ahead of whatever's coming in my life. So I think I got to go with Tony Romo. And I think the here's a guy would get old very quickly with Chris Collinsworth.
See, I think he would stop saying that because it's just about me. He's not going to talk about 106 guys at one time.
Oh, he's going to say
not.
that.
Here's a guy. He's going to talk about that with me every single day, every single minute.
Yes.
Also, is this, what's that Jim Carrey movie where he's like in a simulation?
The Truman Show.
The Truman Show. Is this like a Truman Show situation where he has no idea, or do we hear this commentation, like these commentators? This is what we're talking about, right?
Oh, that's a good wrinkle. I'm assuming we know about it. Yeah, I think we know about it.
We know about it. All right, yeah. So that's our would you rather for that one. Good stuff. All right, moving on to the more important things of running backs. Actually, that was important. I take that back.
Wait. Before we move on, the number one guy to commentate your life has to be Jim Nantz. We just kind of mentioned him.
Oh, yeah.
It actually happens in How I Met Your Mother with Barney. Jim Nantz narrates Barney's perfect week. It is so worth watching. Go check it out.
You heard it here first. Check it out. Well, you probably didn't hear it here first, but check it out regardless. All right, running back situation, week 3 preview in the form of would you rather for running backs. Ready? Tevin Coleman, Atlanta running back, at Detroit, or Christian McCaffrey, Carolina running back versus New Orleans. Who would you rather have week 3?
This is interesting because there's 2 guys with really good matchups, and here's a couple of guys that have really a lot of potential, but they're really kind of like the second running back on their teams.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, this is tough. I am gonna go on a limb and say McCaffrey, just based on the fact that I think Freeman is gonna go off against Detroit, and I don't know if Jonathan Stewart will against New Orleans. So I think McCaffrey is a safer bet this week, especially if he's catching the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah, he's the guy catching it. I think Cam will have a bounce back week, and it's going to be a shootout like it always is with New Orleans. That defense is terrible. McCaffrey's going to light them up. Detroit, we're seeing Monday night a little bit. The Giants can't run for shit, but Detroit's kind of bottling those running backs up. So Tevin Coleman might have a tough go of it at Detroit in that dome. Another would you rather running back, Leonard Fournette versus Baltimore. That game is 9:30 a.m. on Sunday, our time. 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Leonard Fournette versus Baltimore or Lamar Miller at New England. Who would you rather have?
two really tough matchups. Lamar Miller did not fare well against New England last year. I'm going to go with Fournette. I'd rather have Fournette this week just based on, some, relative success in the first couple weeks. Baltimore's obviously a good team. I think Jacksonville is going to be way out of their depth this week against the Ravens, but, I'd still like Fournette just based on volume.
Yeah, I'm going Fournette volume. He had 14 carries last week and 21 the week before. He's getting ridiculous numbers there, and that team is not passing it. Is that game in London?
I think it's still in Jacksonville. It's just early for some reason. I don't know.
All right, we're gonna look into that.
I don't get it.
I don't know. It's late. We're gonna post on our social media about that, I guess. But yeah, I'd rather have Fournette. I think Lamar Miller. They gave the ball a lot to Dante Foreman. The rookie. And New England does a really good job bottling up your best target, or best guy, which is Lamar Miller, and to a lesser extent than DeAndre Hopkins. Anyway, would you rather, little comedy one here, would you rather bet your life savings? Who would you rather bet your life savings on in a Skittles eating contest? Marshawn Lynch or Eddie Lacy? We all know Marshawn Lynch loves eating Skittles. We all know Eddie Lacy's a fat shit. Who would you rather bet your life savings on in a Skittles eating contest?
Marshawn Lynch, hands down. Eddie Lacy might be, fat Eddie, but Marshawn Lynch has the killer instinct. He's a national treasure. There's no one I trust with my life savings on, in any scenario more than I trust Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, I'm going Lynch, even though he jokes around a lot. I feel like Lacy would get lazy with that Skittles eating contest.
Yeah, he might fall asleep or something.
Yeah, whatever.
Like sugar crash or something.
Lynch all the way, baby. All right. Moving on to wide receiver preview for week 3. Would you rather have Terrell Pryor Sr. versus Oakland or Devontae Parker at New York Jets?
Oh, man, this is tough. They're both really good matchups. First off, I think I'm going to go with Terrell Pryor Sr. I do like Devontae Parker, but I think we just saw last week against the Jets that the possession receiver, which is Michael Crabtree in that instance on the Oakland, had a really, really good week against the Jets, and Cooper was pretty quiet. Terrell Pryor this week, I don't think Oakland can stop anybody through the air. Jermaine Kearse just had 2 touchdowns on them last week. I think Terrell Pryor is going to have a field day in the end zone this week. Obviously the drops are a concern, but I think he's going to have a nice week this week.
I'm going Devontae Parker, and I actually have these two guys on my team, one of my teams, which is pretty funny. But this is my flex spot, basically. So I'm going Devontae Parker. Listen, Terrell Pryor had 4 targets this week. That offense looked out of sync, and Oakland was sneakily good against wide receivers last year. If you look at their stats, their defense. I'm going Devontae Parker. He had the targets there. He's a faster version of Alshon Jeffrey, like Jay Cutler said, and he's Jay Cutler's prototypical wide receiver that he likes throwing to. I think he had 8 targets last week. 9 targets against Los Angeles. And it's only going to get better, the efficiency. So give me Devontae Parker in my flex spot over Terrell Pryor. Another would you rather, DeAndre Hopkins at New England or Dez Bryant at Arizona? 2 tough matchups.
Very tough matchups. I am not really happy about either one of these. I think if you have either one, you almost have to start them. But
yeah, correct.
But I think DeAndre Hopkins has more of a chance to have a good game, despite the fact that Bill Belichick is a genius and loves to take away the opposition's best weapon on offense. And he has shut down Hopkins in the past. I think Hopkins has more of a chance to have a good week than Dez Bryant, who looks like he's lost a step. And Dez is going to get Patrick Peterson this week. I don't see a good game coming at all for Dez. Yeah. I think I'll take Hopkins here.
I agree. I think Dez is going to get shadowed by Peterson, but at the same time, Hopkins, like I was just saying about Lamar Miller, New England does a really good job of taking out your top 1 or 2 guys. Not taking them out injury-wise, but taking them out of the game plan. And DeAndre Hopkins is the best weapon. Lamar Miller's second there. But with the rookie Deshaun Watson throwing it to him, New England's going to eat them up. That defense is a good streaming option this week. Give me Dez Bryant, who's getting targeted a ton at Arizona. I think he can even overcome Patrick Peterson. Just like Detroit did week 1. Those wide receivers had some good stat lines there. All right. Would you rather wait in line for 1 whole week? That's 7 days, people, for the iPhone X, the new iPhone coming out. Or, this is intense, so we just put, or suffer a high ankle sprain.
This is not even a question in my mind. First off, you waste a week of your life, and then you got to pay for it, which is what, upwards of $1,000.
It's going to be $1,000.
I'll take the high ankle sprain. You know what? We see OBJ had a high ankle sprain, and he's running around just fine tonight on Monday Night Football. You know, it's going to suck, but you know what? It's a much cheaper option, and you know, I don't really want to waste a week of my life waiting in line. I can't even wait in line for like 10 minutes without getting pissed off. So I'd rather have the high ankle sprain.
I think we need to put more folds into this because I just realized, all right, we'd rather wait in line a week for the iPhone X, pay $1,000, but also get the phone, and then it's just like a high ankle sprain. That's it. So how about we add this into the fold? You get $500, and you have to go through a high ankle sprain. You're taking the high ankle sprain still, obviously.
I'm taking it without the money. I'll gladly take that $500.
Yeah. I don't know. This is a tough one. I'd rather wait in the line a week for the iPhone X and get that phone rather than suffer a high ankle sprain and get $500. After that added fold, it's still not enough. I don't want a high ankle sprain. Are you crazy? Give me the phone after a week.
Dude, you will start losing your mind when you're.
Yeah, I don't want to do either one. Don't get me wrong. It's stupid either way. But I mean, it's not stupid. Sorry. If you're doing that, go for it. But I will not be doing that.
But seriously.
All right. Tight end. On a more serious note again. Get back into it. Tight end, would you rather for week 3 preview? Jason Witten at Arizona or Jack Doyle versus Cleveland at home?
Oh, man. I really like both of these matchups. I'm going to go Witten just based on the first 2 weeks, but Doyle is really developing a rapport with Brissett. So, you know, if you have him, I wouldn't feel bad. About starting him. You still got to go with Witten, though, just based on week 1 and 2.
Yeah, I go Witten. He's a top 10 tight end now. He's shown this year. Jack Doyle had a bad week 1, good week 2, but not enough, stuff to back him up right now. Those are 2 good matchups, though. By the way, I don't know if you noticed the theme. The first would you rather is both good matchups. Second one is bad matchups. This bad matchup: Delaney Walker versus Seattle or Zach Ertz at New York Giants, week 3. Who would you rather have?
I'd rather go with the Ertz this week. I really like both these guys. If you have either one of these guys, you're starting them. But Walker versus Seattle is a lot scarier to me than Ertz against New York Giants. Ertz has really got a nice, thing going with Carson Wentz. The Giants are not impervious to tight end production. We just saw Ebron score on Monday Night Football against them. So give me Ertz this week.
Yeah, I'm going Ertz too. He's shown incredible rapport with Carson Wentz. He had 5 catches for 97 yards last week, 10 targets. The 10 targets is what really is awesome there to see. He did have a big 53-yard gain. That was kind of a fluke play. So even if he didn't have that, he would have gotten like 40 yards, which isn't great, but he still got 10 targets. So give me Ertz for the rest of the year. He's a top 5 to 10 tight end. All right. This next one, comedic, who'd you rather? Whose job would you rather have on Sunday? Scott Hansen or Blake Bortles? So just a little background here before we get into it. Blake Bortles is a quarterback of Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's just throwing picks left and right. He's getting hammered. That offensive line is bad. He's getting sacked a ton. He takes beatings on Sunday, basically. Scott Hansen, the host of NFL Red Zone on NFL Network, has to stand and commentate for what, 8 hours?
Like 7.5, 8 hours. Yeah.
7 hours. And I don't know how this guy goes to the bathroom, eats anything for 7 hours straight. So whose job would you rather have on Sunday?
Who's Jacksonville playing this week? That's really what it comes down to for me. Baltimore? Oh my God. I'll take Scott Hansen's job. I will hold it in for 8 hours if I need to, as long as I don't have the Baltimore Ravens chasing after me, trying to rip my face off.
One thing to mention, so like I don't know if you've ever seen the show Blue Mountain State, but the best job in the world is a backup quarterback. Blake Bortles might get benched. He might be the backup this season. So I'm actually taking Blake Bortles, even though we're in like the commentating game, like the football commentating game, kind of like Scott Hansen to a lesser extent. I'm taking Blake Bortles on the off chance I just blow the game and I'm the backup quarterback, which is the best job. Watching Chad Henne throw picks and you're sitting on the bench, like enjoying your Sunday and getting paid millions of dollars. Give me that.
Oh, fair enough.
Thanks. All right, that does it for our Would You Rather section for Week 3 preview. Let us know your thoughts on that. I know we had fun doing that. One quick thing for week 3 preview. We want to talk about streaming defenses again.
Yeah.
We saw Jacksonville defense and the Rams defense had terrible week 2s after really good week 1s. There's no stud defense / special teams that you should be playing every week, with the exception of maybe the Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks. These are defenses that you could pick up for week 3 that have really good matchups. So we're just going to list them off, say a couple things about them. The Rams at San Francisco. That's the Thursday night game. Brian Hoyer can't throw it at all.
Aaron Donald's back.
Aaron Donald's back. Buccaneers at Minnesota. Again, if Bradford's out, that's a really good matchup. If Bradford's in for week 3, maybe still stream them. But
they're like a middle of the pack option if Bradford plays.
Yep. Patriots defense versus Houston. Deshaun Watson, rookie quarterback. They're going to eat him alive at home.
His head is going to be spinning with Bill Belichick's game plan defensively.
Yep. And they had a bad week 1. They're pissed. They should be bounced back again in week 3. Steelers defense, which we mentioned a little while ago, I think last week, versus Chicago. Chicago's offense is anemic. TJ Watt is injured, so watch his status. If he's in the game for Steelers, it's even better, icing on the cake. And then one last defense to stream. Dolphins at New York Jets. That's one last streaming defense there for week 3. All right, and that does it for our streaming defenses. That does it for our week 3 preview as well. So let us know your comments, your thoughts on everything. The Would You Rather section, the new one that we just did. Also, if you have any questions on matchups, on lineups, who should I play in my flex spot, whatever it is, tweet at us, send us Instagram messages, send us Facebook messages, all that stuff. Unqualified FF, at Unqualified FF. We're happy to help out up until game time on Sunday. Even Thursday night and Monday night, we'll do that too. One last thing, too. Subscribe on iTunes.
Yes.
It's all over our social media. Subscribe and leave us a review. What you think of the show, improvements, things you like, things you want to keep on seeing, whatever it is. That helps the show grow, helps us develop a listener base, and helps us give you more information like we've been doing. So,
yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's time to start making moves that are going to win you your league. It's time. It's time, people. No more fooling around after the first 2 weeks.
Week 3, let's go. See you later.